Hi friend, welcome back to Running to Myself. I'm your host, Trisha Stanton. Today I want to tell you a story about street cats, an Amazon order, a cardboard box spaceship, and a lesson I did not expect to learn about relationships. You see, sometimes the greatest growth doesn't come from conflict, it comes from watching a cat choose a cardboard box over the adorable two-story cat house that you so thoughtfully purchased, and realizing maybe this isn't about the cats after all. When we moved from our farm in Indiana to the suburbs of San Antonio, I was certain there was one season of my life that was over, the taking in stray animals season. I thought those days were far behind me. Well, not so fast. You see, our neighborhood has established feral cat colonies. Most of them are truly feral, never to be touched, rarely even seen up close, and for the most part, we all coexist peacefully. Occasionally, there's a rally through the neighborhood for catch, neuter, release programs. And then, about 2 years ago, a tiny yellow kitty started showing up on our porch. She was young, too young, and she had clearly just had kittens. I learned she was keeping them in the bushes down the street. Now, if you know me, you already know what happened next. I fed her. And I didn't just feed her, I fed her well. She was undernourished, thin, nursing, trying to survive. So I fed her generously. In fact, I fed her so generously that she decided to move in. One day, to my delight and surprise, she brought all her tiny kittens into our yard. They became our outdoor entertainment. The kittens were young enough to be tamed, and we had the best time watching them tumble through the grass, chase each other, wrestle, and learn how to be cats. Now, they were still technically street cats, but they showed up like clockwork for 2 meals a day at our house, and probably a few more from the neighbors. Then winter came, and I started thinking, they're going to be cold. So what do responsible former farm girls do? Well, we order a 2-story insulated cat house from Amazon. It was adorable, warm and cozy, thoughtful, practical. I placed it on the back porch where they like to hang out with delight and satisfaction. There, problem solved. A couple of weeks later, my granddaughter turned a large Amazon shipping box into what she proudly declared as a cat spaceship. And if you know cats, you already know where this story is going. All winter long, those cats chose the cardboard box, not the insulated, cozy, thoughtfully designed 2-story cat house, the cardboard box, every single time. You see, what I thought they needed was not what they wanted. I was mildly offended. I kept showing them how to enter the cat house. I lured them in with food as I thought, look, this is better for you. Sound familiar? Well, here's where the story stops being about cats. How often do we do this with people? We decide what they need. We decide what would be better for them. We decide what choice makes the most sense. And when they choose something different, especially when it's someone we love, we feel unsettled, frustrated. If you have young adult kids, or even not so young adult kids, you've probably experienced this. You think, why would you choose that job? Why would you move there? Why would you date that person? Why would you parent that way? Why wouldn't you choose the insulated 2-story cat house of life? We don't think of it as control. We think of it as love. And often it is, but love mixed with preference can get tangled. Now, for better or for worse, I've had a great deal of practice in this area because my loved ones never seem to make the choice that I would make. So here's the question I started asking myself. Do I want to preserve the relationship or do I want to preserve my preference? Because those are not always the same thing. My preference says, this is the better option. But relationship says, You matter more than my opinion about the option. Preference says if you would just do it this way, everything would be smoother. Relationship says, I trust that you get to choose your way. And that's uncomfortable, especially when you can see the insulated house sitting right there. So let's talk about why this feels so hard. You see, we project ourselves into their situation. If I were in your shoes, I would choose this. But you are not them. You have different wiring, different values, different risk tolerance, different dreams, and different lessons to learn. We confuse wisdom with control. Sometimes we truly do have wisdom, experience, perspective, but wisdom offered is different than wisdom enforced. And the moment our tone shifts from offering to insisting, relationships start to strain. We attach our identity to being right. If they choose differently and it works out, what does that say about our way? Nothing. But our brains don't always see it that way. This is where mind management becomes so powerful because the discomfort isn't coming from their choice. It's coming from our thoughts about their choice. If our thought is they're making a mistake, we might feel anxious, frustrated, urgent, and then our action would be over explaining, subtle criticism, withdrawal, lecturing, and that results in distance. But what if we chose a different thought? What if we chose to think they're allowed to choose their own cardboard box? That could bring us the feeling of calm, respect, curiosity, which leads to listening, asking questions, and staying connected. The result of that is a preserved relationship. And notice this does not require agreement, but it does require maturity on our part. There is a difference between influence and control. Influence says, here's what I see, take what's helpful. Control says, if you don't do it my way, I will withdraw warmth. And that might sound harsh, but sometimes withdrawal is subtle. A shift in tone, a shorter response, less engagement, and often we don't even realize we're doing it. When preserving the relationship becomes the priority, we stay warm even when we disagree. So what do we do when someone we love makes a choice we wouldn't choose? Well, first, pause the internal narrative. Notice your first thought and name it. This is my preference talking. Next, separate safety from preference. Is this truly a safety issue, or is this just a values difference? Not everything uncomfortable is dangerous. Next, ask curious questions instead of leading ones. Curiosity preserves connection, but cross-examination destroys it. Then, remind yourself their life is not my performance review. Their outcome does not determine whether I was a good parent, partner, or friend. And finally, decide intentionally. What matters most here? Being right or being close? Because sometimes you cannot have both. Let's speak specifically to the adult-child dynamic. You see, there is a developmental shift that needs to happen. You move from manager to consultant. Managers control outcomes. Consultants offer input and step back. And that transition, it can feel like loss, but it's actually growth. The goal of parenting was never to create someone who mirrors your decisions. It was to raise someone capable of making their own. Let's come back to the cats. All winter long, those cats curled up in the cardboard spaceship. The insulated house sat empty. And here's the beautiful part. They were fine, healthy, playful, thriving. My job was never to force them into my version of better. It was to provide what I could and allow them to choose. That's it. That's the lesson. Is there someone in your life who you are trying to move into the cat house? Where are you tightening your grip because you care? And what would it look like to loosen it just a little? Not abandoning, not disengaging, just respecting autonomy. Preserving relationship over preference does not mean silence. It does not mean approval of everything. It simply means choosing connection over control. It means remembering that love is not proven by how well we direct someone. It's proven by how well we stay, even when they choose the box, especially when they choose the box. If this resonates with you, sit with it for a while. You don't have to solve anything today. Just notice where you might be gripping and ask yourself, is my goal to be right or to remain close? Until next time, keep running to yourself.